Hey everyone, it's Vale here, and today we're bringing you a top 10 champions that you should pick to abuse solo queue for the end of Season 11. Just before we get started, make sure you jump on over to our website to keep up to date with all the best champions to play with the highest win rates across any ratings, and check out our tier lists where we regularly update which champions are super duper overpowered and which ones are absolute pants. So let's start off with champion number 10, Camille. So with Conqueror and Goredrinker getting nerfed, champions in the top lane that really thrived off this took a massive hit. Camille was already strong for a very long time, but that was slightly out of favour due to just how disgusting Goredrinker was. Now that item has been hit with the nerf hammer, Camille is absolutely thriving. Divine Sunderer or Trinity Force are allowing Camille to do some ridiculous damage and really take over the meta in the top lane, especially in the higher elo brackets where players are more familiar and understanding of a high skill ceiling playstyle. Camille has really come out of her shell in this patch, and if you haven't started abusing it yet, you may want to go ahead and get started. A super fun champion that will likely be viable for a very long time, so definitely a champion to learn while she's strong. A big factor in her strength is that despite being actually one of the best scaling champions in the game, and functional either as a side laner or in a teamfight dive comp, she also has a pretty solid early game, and can come out on top in a range of matchups. In the number 9 spot, we've got Urgot. Now, Urgot has flown under the radar for as long as we can remember, and honestly, people just forget how ridiculously strong this champion is. Again, due to the recent changes, he is now really dominating the scene due to not having to put up with all of those Goredrinker abusers. Urgot is actually a champion that doesn't really rely on a mythic item, and instead just the raw damage from his kit and core legendary items such as Titanic Hydra and Black Cleaver. Once you get a lead on this champion, he's so unbelievably hard to shut down. Urgot's mid game is where he spikes massively, and he does really well at dealing with those close range threats. Most melee opponents simply get shredded trying to deal with him, and as long as he's able to get in range of his enemies, he does absolute work. Urgot may not be the most appealing champion in the game, but honestly, once you give him a go and see your LP soaring into oblivion, you'll probably end up changing your name to Carry Crustacean and listen to Crab Rave on repeat. Cigar or no cigar, we've got Graves. Now, despite him receiving a nerf this patch with Riot reducing his armor slightly, this champion is still absolutely disgusting. Due to the fact he can now go down the Immortal Shield Bow route, which is arguably one of the strongest mythics right now, he's having a ton of fun in all kinds of gameplay. Graves is continuously picked in top, mid and jungle, and there's honestly not really many champions that can compare to his strengths and damage. He basically thrives against all of the best champions in the game, and in a meta where tons of different champions are actually popping up, he's still just as strong as ever. Graves gains momentum in the mid game but continues to be a threat throughout the game. A full blast from his auto attacks deals 200% AD damage late into the game, which is often why you can see him explode a carry on his own in just one auto attack. Graves does incredibly well with gold and levels, so attaining a lead early game is a surefire way to carry with ease. Unfortunately for those AD carry mains, I don't think Graves is going anywhere anytime soon. Next up, we've got the Lady of Light herself, and she's actually in the number 7 spot. The funniest thing about Lux is that in recent seasons, she just hasn't seemed to be able to have the tools to deal with all of the modern League of Legends champions, full of mobility and crazy kits, whereas Lux is basically hit your abilities or miss them. However, due to the recent buffs and the meta shift, Lux is actually beasting it in the mid lane right now. A bit of extra damage on her E and a significantly shorter cooldown on her ultimate, and she is absolutely loving her life. It allows her to basically clear every other wave with her ultimate straight away from level 6, preventing her from being repeatedly camped and dove, which is where a lot of her weaknesses used to come from. Now she farms up easier, does more damage, and does her job with a less of a high risk, high reward playstyle. She's also really viable as a support too. Her E harass is so difficult to dodge due to the raw size of the AoE and the speed of the projectile, so she works really well in lanes where you're looking to generally whittle down your opponents. Caitlyn is a great AD carry pairing as you can chain her binding with Kate's traps and finish them off with your double long range ultimates. The best thing about Lux though is actually she's all about the player behind her. You hit your abilities, you carry. You miss your abilities, put her in the bin. Talking of champions in the bin, number 6 is all about Viego, and last patch he was really struggling. He was absolutely gutted a few patches ago, but then buffed again after Riot realising that the champion sunk down to an unforgivable level. I mean, if he got a few early kills he was still absolutely disgusting due to his crazily loaded kit, but he just lacked the damage or survivability to actually get to that stage when playing against all these crazy strong Goredrinker abusers. But now they've been nerfed and comboed that with his recent buff, he's now back in full force. The Sunderer build is working wonders for his bulkier, tankier build, or you can even go down the Immortal Shield Bow route and find yourself dealing incredible damage and allowing you to reset more often and carry even easier. Viego is such a difficult champion to play against. Once he gets those resets in a fight, it's incredibly difficult to turn the momentum in the other direction. Getting free uses of his ultimate, which deals a ton of damage to low HP targets, allows him to get another reset and use that ultimate again. Even in games where Viego appears to get off to a slow start, you can see him take over if the right scenario arises. We really don't see this champion falling off the meta anytime soon, so make sure you're abusing him and utilising his resets to carry yourself out of whatever elo you're stuck in. In the number 5 spot, we've got Poppy. And yep, you heard us correctly, this champion is absolutely nuts. She's arrived in full swing with her humongous hammer, and honestly, it feels like she's everywhere right now. Poppy is an absolute beast at dealing with all of these high mobility champions, which, let's face it, are still being played in 99% of games. Her W can stop all kinds of gap closes or escapes, making her amazing at shutting down invades or skirmish attempts. Due to Poppy actually building lucidity boots now, her cooldowns are unbelievably short, allowing her to stun her enemies all the time with her E and even easier with her flash E. Her high damage, mobility reduction, CC and objective control with her ultimate all make her an absolute force to be reckoned with in this patch, so make sure you're making the most of it. Poppy can be played in the top lane or in the jungle and can invest heavily into tanky items or even take a Divine Sundra and provide to deal ridiculous damage whilst also being basically immortal. Poppy is particularly effective against champions like Kayn or Talon, as she can slam them into a wall when they're moving through it or hopping over it, so this pick could be your new pocket pick to counter champions like that. In the number 4 spot, we've got Miss Fortune. Now, Miss Fortune has seen a ridiculous amount of popularity in the last few patches and is being thrown around like a hot potato in the World Championships. She did actually get a nerf this patch, but it hasn't really scratched the surface of this champion's carry potential. Her oppressive early game damage and game-changing ultimate is still keeping her in the most popular AD carry position, with an unbelievable pick rate across all elos. Her laning is solid and she has the power to trade into most matchups and get priority, but when paired with an engaged support with AoE lockdown, this is where she really shines. MF with Leona, Rel or Amumu, or even a jungler like Jarvan can be incredibly difficult to play against, particularly for an immobile carry. Those big AoE setups that allow her to channel her ultimate let her shred the enemy team, and a few patches ago, her ultimate was buffed to fire more waves, which resulted in a 16.6% damage increase at level 6. And let's not pretend it didn't already hurt beforehand. If you're lucky enough to pick up MF if it's not already been picked or banned, you're probably going to end up winning, especially if you land that wombo combo ultimate. Now in the number 3 position, we've got a champion that we haven't actually seen that much of for a while, and that's actually Zyra. Zyra is another champion that has always flown under the radar, and don't get me wrong, she's actually pretty difficult to play, but Zyra's damage and control is honestly completely underappreciated, and she's sitting at a crazy win rate right now. Zyra's poke in lane is immensely oppressive, and if you get the right lane partner like a Caitlyn, you can pretty much remove the enemy's ability to even play the game. That's not it though. The strength of her itemization and builds allow her to melt any type of opponent, including the squishies, but even the tankiest of champions with Liandry's. A big factor when playing Zyra is actually being able to get your combo off before you go down. Frontliners, tanks and assassins will all dive onto you because they see you as this lovely little squishy target that's free gold for them. But if you get your plants and your ultimate down beforehand, it's going to basically end up like walking into Jumanji. Even if you fall but you manage to get those plants off, you're going to deal some ridiculous damage, and every single auto attack applies Liandry's, which is just going to burn every type of opponent down. Zyra is one of the few champions that can actually carry team fights when she's already dead, as long as she manages to get those abilities off beforehand. Zyra's plants are also a really powerful tool in lane as well, and they work really well against picks like Thresh, as they can be used to block his hook. And that being said, you do have to watch out for champions that can engage, like Leona, as they're the ones that are going to give you the hardest time. In the number 2 position, we've got the king of assassins, and that's Kha'Zix. He's been absolutely loving his life for the majority of this season, but people have still forgotten about him amongst the hype of Gore Drinker and all the recent assassin junglers like Qiyana and Talon. However, no assassin jungler has ever got close to the level of strength that this champion has when it comes to solo carrying games, especially in solo queue. His damage, mobility, snowball potential and ability to carry on his own has never really been rivaled. A few kills early on and this champion will just destroy everything and everyone that he sees with just a few clicks. Gore Drinker nerfed? No problem. There's just another 3 mythics that this champion can choose from. Conqueror nerfed? I always ran Dark Harvest anyway. This champion is definitely enjoying all of the recent changes, and if you aren't playing this champion, you probably want to ban it instead. If you do manage to lock him in, then make sure you're playing towards your level 6 power spike. Once you get evolved, your damage increases immensely and you'll be cleaning up skirmishes in a blink of an eye. Now before we finish off this list with our number 1 pick of the patch, we've got a few honourable mentions, and first up is Teemo. He got a huge buff and is tilting players off the face of the earth. He's dominating lanes and ruining players' days all over the world with his shrooms and lengthy blind. Jinx was also a contender after the recent generous buffs that were given to her, and if you make it out of the lane phase of this champion, you're probably going to have a great time. Singed is another champion having a whale of a time in this patch, sitting at actually one of the highest win rates in the entire game and being played in both of the solo lanes. Wait, what? But in the number 1 position we have the main man himself, and that's Warwick. Now Warwick has been pretty disgusting for a decent amount of time, but due to Gore Drinker and the assassin jungle meta being so dominant, people have kind of forgotten that it exists. Well, definitely now that is not the case. This champion is an absolute monster. He basically wins every single jungle matchup in the game due to his unbelievable dueling potential and ridiculous self-healing. But not only that, once he gets level 6 he can jump around the map ganking and healing his way to that sweet victory. Warwick syncs so well with his Divine Sundra, as not only does it give him that extra burst, healing and survivability, but the mythic passive gives magic and armor penetration, and Warwick does a substantial amount of magic damage even when he's building AD items. Warwick's damage is just absolutely absurd, especially once he's got that early timer, and it becomes ridiculously hard to deal with. You simply cannot invade him unless you've got 2 or more friends with you, and if he invades you, you simply just have to bend over and run home before he kills you, as well as all of your jungle camps. Now I never thought I'd see the day where I'd be permabanning Warwick, but this is League of Legends, and in this patch, this is Warwick's game. Well, that's going to conclude our top 10 champions that you should be picking to abuse solo queue in this patch, and to finish off the season strong. Now we hope it helped, and we hope you agreed with our choices. Let us know in the comments of any champions that you think we left out, as I'm sure there'll be plenty of suggestions. I've been your host Vale, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. As always, take care.